Miss Lamb, the divorce agreement you asked me to draft has been sent over. You must have received it already, right? I took the packet from the courier and murmured, "Thank you, Attorney Lee." By the time the call ended, the delivery man had already walked away. I turned and carried the documents into the room. Not long after, the door opened. A deep, warm male voice drew closer from the hallway and stopped right behind me. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. I've been away on a business trip these past few days. Work piled up, so I didn't have time to check my phone and couldn't get in touch with you." As soon as he finished, Michael Grant came around to face me, lowered his head, and pressed his cheek to my belly, his eyes soft. "Has the baby been giving you a hard time lately?" Michael Grant. I suddenly called him by his full name, and he froze. He was 10 years older than me. I had always affectionately called him Uncle. Only in bed, when he wore me down so long I sobbed, would I choke out his full name. Without thinking, I opened the agreement, flipped to the last page, covered the rest, and held it up to him. "You once said that when the baby is born, you'd give me a gift. I've already decided. Sign here." My voice was steady. He didn't hesitate. He picked up the pen and quickly signed his name at the bottom. I hadn't expected him to sign so quickly. He didn't even bother to read it. I was stunned for a moment. "You didn't even check it carefully. Aren't you afraid I might slip in papers that could ruin you?" Michael only smiled gently and reached out to pinch my cheek. "What's mine is yours. When the baby is born, everything will belong to you and our child." His words made me laugh bitterly. Unfortunately, what I wanted this time was freedom. Before I could speak, his phone suddenly rang. He turned it off quickly, but I had already seen the name glowing clearly on the screen, Jessica Evans. "There's something at the company. I need to take this call for a moment." He pocketed his phone, face calm. When he saw me nod, he turned toward the study. But after only a few steps, he stopped, looked back and asked, "By the way, you've called me so many times these past few days. Was something wrong?" My heart clenched, but I only shook my head. "Nothing." He nodded lightly, didn't press, and went straight into the study. The door closed, and his back vanished completely from sight. I lowered my head and laughed at myself. It was true. Nothing at all. Nothing, except that I had just been in a car accident, stood on the edge of death, and couldn't even keep our baby alive. That day I had called him 78 times, only hoping he would come see our child one last time. But he was with his first love, Jessica Evans, who had just returned from abroad, watching the sunrise together. Afraid of being disturbed, he rejected every call from me and eventually shut off his phone. That was when I understood. Jessica was the one he had loved since his youth, and I was nothing more than a substitute. I was young, but I still knew one thing. If a heart already belongs to someone, don't try to wedge anyone else into it. He was 10 years older than me. How had he still not learned that? Looking at the divorce agreement with his signature on it, I smiled bitterly. "Michael Grant, if you love her that much, then I'll give you back, so you can belong to her forever." I pulled out my phone and dialed Attorney Lee. The call connected quickly. "Attorney Lee, the divorce agreement has been signed. When can I get the divorce certificate?" On the other end, he was clearly surprised that things had progressed so quickly. He paused for a moment, then replied professionally, "If we follow the proper procedure, it will take about a month." Hearing the exact time frame, I entrusted the entire divorce process to him. After hanging up, I set a 30-day countdown on my phone. That night, Michael slept in the study. The next morning when I stepped outside, I caught sight of Michael already dressed neatly in a suit, clearly ready to leave for work. The moment he saw me, his movements faltered for a split second before returning to normal. "I've got some business today, so I can't go to the prenatal appointment with you. You'll have to go on your own. Later, I'll bring home those strawberry cakes you like." Prenatal appointment? Bitterness rose in my chest. The child was already gone. What was there left to check? But facing his gaze, I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I only gave a small nod. He didn't head out immediately. Instead, he pointed to his cheek. I stood frozen, pretending not to understand. When I didn't react, he spoke up. "Where's my goodbye kiss?" It was a little rule we'd kept since our wedding day. Every time he left the house, I would give him a kiss goodbye. Now I only shook my head. "Aren't you in a hurry?" "You should go." This little girl, the older she gets, the less she clings to me, he chuckled softly. He didn't push further and left. As soon as he was gone, I changed clothes and headed out too, but not to the hospital. My destination was a seminar hosted by Lucas Carter. I'd heard he had just returned from overseas and was giving a talk at the university that day. By the time I arrived, the event had already ended, and people were streaming out of the hall. Passing by, I overheard whispers of admiration. Incredible. So young, and already a Nobel laureate. His research achievements are astounding. Yes, it was worth coming to hear him. I went against the flow of people into the hall. The place was still crowded, with many surrounding the man of the hour, Lucas Carter. I stood for a while, but seeing that the crowd wasn't thinning, I decided to leave. Just as I turned, a surprised yet delighted voice called out my name. I looked back to see Lucas pushing his way through the throng, his eyes shining. Evelyn, it's been so long. My eyes curved into a smile. It really has. We chatted for a while before I hesitantly got to the point. Lucas, I want to join your research institute. Is that possible? His answer came at once, full of joy. Of course, absolutely. Evelyn, back then you were the top student at the institute. You skipped grades again and again right after entering. It was only because your family thought it was too hard on you that they stopped you from pursuing research, and the professor reluctantly gave the spot to me. If you hadn't left, that position would have been yours. The Nobel Prize should have been yours too. His tone softened as he glanced at me with concern. But my institute is overseas. Will your family agree? I smiled faintly. Back then, my parents thought a daughter shouldn't have to work so hard, so they arranged for me to marry a reliable man. But now, I'm about to get divorced. I can finally live the life I want. At the mention of divorce, Lucas's emotions flared visibly. Then when can you leave? In a month. He looked at me, smiling, and I found myself smiling back. Then I'll wait for you, Evelyn. Just as we were lost in conversation, a familiar voice suddenly rang out behind me. Reflexively, I turned and met a face all too familiar. Michael stood there in a crisp suit, tall and straight-backed, his eyes darkening as they fell on Lucas beside me. Evelyn, aren't you going to introduce us? His voice was calm, but for the first time, I saw jealousy flicker in his eyes. Jealous? Why, when his heart clearly belonged to Jessica Evans? This is my former classmate, Lucas Carter, I said decisively, then tilted my head toward the man next to me. And this is my husband, Michael Grant. With just a few polite words, the two men shook hands. But when they let go, I noticed the faint red marks left on both palms. They quickly tucked their hands behind their backs, faces composed, yet I could feel the air between them bristling like blades about to clash. I pushed down the strange feeling in my chest and waved to Lucas. I'm heading out first. See you later. Then I walked side by side with Michael, not noticing the disappointment lingering in Lucas's eyes as he watched me leave. Once outside, Michael still didn't let it go. What were you doing here? It's been a long time since I came back to campus. I just thought I'd stop by. I answered after a pause, making up an excuse as I followed him to the parking lot. Then I asked in return, didn't you say you were really busy today? Why are you here? Before he could reply, we had already reached the car. Out of habit, I moved to open the passenger door, but the windows slid down, revealing a face I had never been close to, yet one I could hardly call unfamiliar, Jessica Evans. Seeing my gaze pause on her, Michael explained calmly and evenly, I just ran into an old friend. We were catching up for a bit. It sounded like such an ordinary reason. But then my eyes landed on the bag of snacks in his hand. I remembered he had been a student here once. Now that I thought about it, so had Jessica. Whether they had truly been reminiscing about school days or reviving something deeper, only the two of them knew. Hello, I'm Jessica Evans. You must be Michael's wife, right? You're so young and beautiful. She smiled warmly as she greeted me, her tone overly familiar. I forced a stiff smile and nodded. Since she made no move to offer me the front seat, I went straight to the back. Perhaps my small concession only fueled her confidence. In the car, she chatted and joked freely with Michael, acting as if I wasn't even there. In her hands was the box of pastries he had just bought. She picked up a piece, holding it to his lips. These red apple cakes are just as good as they used to be. Here, try one. Focused on driving, Michael leaned over without thinking and took a bite. Almost instantly, her playful voice rang out, "Clumsy, you bit my hand." The corners of his eyes crinkled with amusement, but when he glanced up into the rearview mirror, his eyes met mine. For a split second, his expression faltered. Quickly, he pulled back and offered the rest of the cake to me. "Evelyn, do you want some?" "No." I shook my head firmly. "Come on, just try a little. It's really good," Jessica chimed in. "Back in the day when we were students, Michael used to sneak out over the wall just to buy these for me. At first, he didn't know how and always came back with scrapes, but because I liked them, he kept practicing until he was perfect. After that, he never got hurt again." She recounted each memory in detail, every word underscoring how deeply he had once cared for her. Her eyes kept darting to the mirror, searching for jealousy in my face. But I stayed silent, listening without a flicker of emotion. My indifference must have frustrated her, because she let out a mocking laugh. "Your little wife is so obedient," Michael chuckled. "Yes, very obedient." Their back and forth carried on until the car stopped in front of the Grant family's villa. I got out without a word. Michael stayed behind the wheel, lowering the window. "Later, Jessica and I have a class reunion. Since you're pregnant, it's better if you don't go. Go inside and rest." No words of reassurance, no reluctance to part, nothing I used to long for. I turned and walked into the house. The moment the door shut behind me, the car pulled away, speeding into the distance. I told myself he wouldn't come home that night. But close to midnight, just as I was drifting into a haze of sleep, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but I already knew who it was. Sure enough, when I picked up, Jessica's voice came through. "Michael's drunk. Come pick him up." She didn't give me a chance to respond, hanging up immediately after. I sat on the bed, staring at the address she sent. After a long moment of silence, I finally got up, changed my clothes, and stepped out. I wanted to see for myself just what Jessica Evans was trying to prove. What was Jessica's real purpose in calling me there? 15 minutes later, guided by a waiter, I stopped in front of a private room. The door wasn't fully closed, and with just one glance inside, the scene hit me square in the chest. Michael and Jessica were sitting side by side, a single cookie clamped between their lips. Amid the raucous cheers around them, the distance between the two kept shrinking until the last crumb disappeared and their mouths met. At first, both froze, but Jessica quickly feigned shyness and tried to pull back. Yet Michael, drunk and completely out of control, suddenly clutched the back of her neck and kissed her with wild abandon. The crowd erupted in louder cheers. Outside the door, I stood frozen. In my eyes, Michael had always been calm, composed, and restrained. It was the first time I had ever seen him like this. Reckless and consumed. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. I was his wife, yet here I was, standing outside, watching my husband kiss another woman. I turned to leave, but a figure darted out and blocked my way. It was Jessica. Her lipstick hadn't even faded yet, her eyes still shimmering with affection. "Evelyn, you saw everything just now, didn't you? Then you should understand. The one Michael has always loved is me. You're nothing but a shadow, a replacement, because you look a little like me. I advise you to end the pregnancy and get out of here. Or do you really want your child to live as pitifully as you, waiting every night for a husband who never comes home? One day, Michael will divorce you to marry me. When that happens, don't go running back to your parents crying after being thrown aside." I stared at her steadily, my tone calm and even. "Jessica, does Michael know that the woman he's loved all these years is nothing more than a two-faced liar like you?" Her expression stiffened. Before she could retort, I turned and walked straight into the room. Ignoring the startled looks from everyone, I went over, lifted Michael's drunken body, and helped him out. He was so drunk he couldn't even stand properly. In the car, he kept calling Jessica's name over and over. I looked at his face and let out a cold laugh. "Michael Grant, just wait a little longer. In no time at all, we'll both be free." When he finally woke up, it was already the next morning. He blinked in surprise at finding himself back at home. Having drunk too much, he couldn't remember a thing from the night before. Spotting me sitting at the vanity, applying moisturizer, he asked, "How did I get home last night?" "I came to get you," I replied, my tone flat. A flicker of something complicated crossed his face. In a low voice he asked, "Did I do anything out of line?" I only glanced at him, shook my head, then picked up my lipstick and stood, ready to leave. He quickly caught my arm. "Where are you going? To see Lucas Carter?" At the sound of that name, his expression darkened instantly. He pulled me closer, his voice softening. "Evelyn, from now on, you should stay away from him. The way he looks at you, it's not normal." I met his gaze directly. "Not normal? Do you mean the same way you look at Jessica Evans?" "She's just a friend," he stammered, caught off guard as if I'd peeled back a secret he thought hidden. "Then Lucas is my friend too." He was speechless, rubbing the bridge of his nose with a weary sigh. "Evelyn, there are other things I can give in to you on, but not this. On this, you have to listen to me. I'm a man. I know how men think." Then, as if to smooth things over, he opened the nightstand drawer. "Be good. Don't go. Look, before my last business trip I bought you something. I was planning to give it to you today. But as the drawer slid open, something slipped loose. The divorce agreement landed right at his feet. Michael bent down to pick it up, but my hand darted out faster, clutching the stack of papers tightly to my chest. His eyes froze on the document in my arms. At once he understood. "Is this the agreement you gave me to sign last time?" I let out a quiet breath of relief that he hadn't gotten a clear look at the words, then nodded slightly. He chuckled. "Why are you guarding it so tightly? I told you, what I've given you is yours. I can bear everything." I didn't respond, afraid he might press further. I quickly changed the subject. "Didn't you say you had a gift for me? What is it? Show me." As if suddenly remembering, he reached into the drawer and pulled out a set of keys, holding them up in front of me. The destination was a newly purchased villa. Michael clasped my hand as we entered, guiding me inside while speaking warmly. "You once said our old place felt gloomy, like it wasn't a real home, so I bought this one and had it renovated exactly in the style you like." When we passed through the backyard, a sea of purple orchids was in full bloom. His voice softened. "You once whispered that you loved orchids, so I had an entire garden planted just for you." He led me on to the main room, straight into the space beside the master bedroom. When the door opened, it revealed a nursery, crib, toys, tiny clothes all prepared. Hugging me from behind, he whispered as if painting the future. "When our baby is born, this will be the room. Close enough to us, but still giving us our own space. Have you thought of a name? Your name is Evelyn, and I love it. How about we call the baby Grant Evelyn?" But while he spoke, I stayed silent. When he lowered his head, he finally noticed the tears welling in my eyes, spilling down without me realizing. He laughed softly and wiped them away, not doubting for a moment. "See? Why so emotional?" He had no idea those tears weren't moved by love, but by something else entirely. At that moment, a familiar female voice rang from outside the door. "Michael. Evelyn. What a coincidence." Jessica Evans stepped in with a bright smile, her gaze going straight to Michael. "So this is the villa you bought. I just came to see it earlier too. I really loved it, but the agent said it was already taken. Michael, I just got back to the country and don't have a place yet. Why don't you give this villa to me?" Her words were phrased as a question, but her eyes brimmed with certainty. As soon as he heard her, Michael's calm expression shifted. If it had been an ordinary house, he wouldn't have hesitated. In the past, he would have agreed on the spot. But now, he had just promised this one to me. Jessica pressed on, her tone tinged with coyness. "I know it's wrong to take what belongs to someone else, but I really like this villa. And I need it urgently. It's not easy to find one this perfect. Michael, help me this time, please." He hesitated, then finally nodded. "Evelyn, the baby isn't born yet. Let's give this villa to Jessica. Later, I'll buy you another one exactly the same." I only smiled faintly, neither nodding nor shaking my head. It didn't matter. He had already made his choice. My opinion no longer meant anything. And as for the baby, it had been gone for a long time now, something he still didn't know. To show her gratitude, Jessica suggested taking us both out to dinner. When the dishes were served, Michael's phone rang. Glancing at it, he rose to his feet. "Go ahead and eat. I'll take this call outside." I only wanted a quiet meal, but Jessica had no intention of letting me be. Watching me lower my head to eat in silence, she suddenly spoke with a mocking edge. "See? Even if he gives something to you, as long as I want it, in the end he'll still hand it over to me. Little sister, you still haven't given up? If you were smart, you'd end the pregnancy now and step aside with a shred of dignity. If you wait until the day Michael tires of you and throws you out, you'll just become a laughingstock to everyone. I frowned, annoyed. I truly couldn't understand how someone could so shamelessly ignore the fact that the man already had a family. So shameless, barging in like that, even daring to provoke me right to my face. Are you finished? I lifted my head, my tone calm and even. No anger, no sadness, nothing like what Jessica had hoped for. Her expression stiffened, and just as she was about to speak again, she caught sight of a familiar figure from the corner of her eye. In that instant, she suddenly grabbed a steaming bowl of soup and dumped it straight over herself. Bah! Her scream pierced the room. Michael rushed over at once, catching her just as she pretended to collapse. Jessica looked up at him with reddened eyes, her voice choked with grievance. Michael, don't blame Evelyn. You gave me the house, of course she'd be upset. Her words, half enduring and half pitiful, coupled with that fragile appearance, softened him immediately. I rose slowly, keeping my gaze steady. It wasn't me. I didn't throw it on her. Evelyn, even if you're upset, you can't hurt someone else. His eyes held doubt, but when he saw Jessica's pale face, he didn't bother pressing further. Instead, he carried her straight to the hospital. I didn't follow. I went home quietly. It was late when Michael returned, his expression colder than I had ever seen. Still, he tried to restrain himself, speaking in a measured tone. Jessica's burns are serious. You should apologize to her. I shook my head, my voice firm. It wasn't me, and I will not apologize. His brows knitted. Finally, he lost his temper. You're far too stubborn. Jessica is my friend. Your friend? Or the woman you love? My words nearly slipped out, but in the end I swallowed them. If you don't believe me, then check the cameras, I said instead. But he dismissed it as my obstinacy, not caring in the least. He grabbed my hand, trying to drag me to the hospital. I struggled hard, desperate to shake him off. The force was too much. He let go, and I stumbled backward, crashing hard into the corner of the table. Crack! My forehead split open, blood pouring down in a rush. The pain blurred my vision, everything stained red. Evelyn. Michael's panicked cry rang out. He scooped me up in his arms and ran straight to the hospital. The wound was deep. I needed more than 10 stitches. Only after I was bandaged did he finally breathe again, his fear written all over his face. He lowered his head, his voice heavy with guilt. Evelyn, I'm sorry, it was my fault. If you don't want to apologize, then fine. I'll make it up to Jessica for you. I'll handle everything. Through it all, my expression remained blank, but inside my chest, my heart ached so much it was hard to breathe. Even now, he thought I was just being childish, refusing to apologize out of spite. I had already told him, check the cameras, but deep down, he still chose to believe Jessica. Because he loved her, he didn't want to face the truth. That's why he believed her unconditionally, convinced it was me who threw the soup. Just then, the doctor came in, confirming my identity and carefully explaining what I needed to watch for. Michael listened attentively. When the doctor finished, he finally asked, "And what about the baby? How's Evelyn's baby?" The doctor blinked in surprise, flipping through the chart. Baby? There is no baby. Miss Evelyn isn't pregnant. Before the words had even sunk in, Michael's phone rang. He pulled it out, saw the name on the screen, and answered immediately. Without saying a word to me, he turned and hurried away. I watched his back vanish through the door, then lowered my head. All that was left in the depths of my heart was a bitter taste. Michael Grant, you've missed your last chance to know the truth. In the days that followed, he never came home. Instead, Jessica kept sending me messages. On the first day, she sent a picture of him reading her a bedtime story. On the second day, she had sent me pictures one after another, first of Michael carefully blowing on porridge to cool it before feeding her, then of him gently drying her hair, while the 15 stitches on my forehead hadn't been enough to earn even a single visit from him. It wasn't until the day I was discharged that Michael finally appeared. After finishing the paperwork, I followed him out to the parking lot. As usual, the passenger seat was already occupied. When the window rolled down, of course, it was Jessica Evans. Not wanting to share a car with her, I was about to call another taxi when my eyes suddenly froze on the sparkling pendant around her neck. It was the jade amulet my mother had given me for protection. The one I had worn for over 15 years until the day of my wedding, when I removed it and placed it into Michael's hand. From now on, you're my husband. I'm giving this to you to keep you safe for the rest of your life. He had accepted it with joy that day, kissed me, and promised I'll be safe so I can love and cherish you forever. And yet, now that same amulet hung on Jessica's neck. I raised my hand, pointing, my gaze steady on Michael. He turned to follow my eyes, and when he saw it, he froze. The memory of our wedding night flickered across his face and his expression stiffened. He had no explanation ready. Finally, Jessica spoke in my place, her tone light and casual. Don't be upset. Michael wanted to make it up to me. I liked this necklace, so he gave it to me. In that instant, it felt like all the air in my chest had been sucked away. Michael looked at me nervously, worried I would be angry. But I only stared at him for a long moment before saying softly, "Then give it to her. The villa, the amulet, even you, give it all back to her." He drove me back to the villa. As I got out, he reminded me, "Just stay home and be good. I'll take Jessica back." I didn't respond. I turned and walked into the house without looking back. The sound of the engine faded into the distance. Back in the bedroom, I began packing. What needed to be thrown away, I threw away. What could be forgotten, I tried to forget. As I sorted, I realized we hadn't even been married 3 years, and yet there were so many keepsakes. Bracelets, necklaces, hairpins, combs, most of them gifts from him. I gathered them all into a box. When I looked up, my eyes fell on the pale purple dream catcher hanging above the bed. It was something Michael had once made for me himself, in the first year after our wedding. Back then, I was only 20, still working in the lab with my professor. My parents hadn't approved of me continuing my research. Not long after I left the lab, they arranged for me to marry him. My identity shifted overnight, from a student passionate about science to a wife forced to abandon her dreams. The anxiety left me sleepless, and when I did sleep, nightmares plagued me. I often woke up trembling in the middle of the night. Michael had tried everything to help. Most remedies worked only for a few days. Then, somehow, he heard about dream catchers and made one with his own hands, hanging it above our bed. "Now my little princess won't have nightmares anymore," he had said. Whether it was the power of suggestion or simply his tenderness, from that night on, I truly hadn't had another nightmare. Now, I took down the pale purple dream catcher and threw it straight into the box. While sorting the closet, I found an old photo album filled with our years together. There were pictures from the first birthday we spent as a couple, his face smeared with frosting I had playfully smeared on him, his eyes brimming with adoration. But had he been cherishing me, or seeing in me the shadow of another woman I happened to resemble? I couldn't bear to look at the album any longer. I tossed it into the box too. The last thing I packed away was the wedding ring. I remembered clearly how, on our wedding day, when he slid the ring onto my finger, he vowed to be faithful for life. But now I couldn't be sure. Had he meant me when he spoke those words? Or had he been thinking of Jessica? By the time I finished, the sky had already darkened. That was when Michael finally returned. His eyes swept the room, suspicion flickering across his face. "Did you throw out a lot of things?" he asked. "Why does the house feel so empty? Just cleaning?" he asked. "Anything that doesn't belong here, I got rid of." The last words I kept to myself, including myself. He didn't suspect a thing. Instead, he crouched down, pressed his ear against my stomach, and listened for a moment. Then he lifted his head. "Why haven't I heard the baby's heartbeat lately?" I smiled without answering. How could he possibly hear anything, when our child had been gone for more than a month? He didn't notice my silence, nor did he press further. Instead, he pulled me into his arms, his voice low and coaxing. "Evelyn, there's really nothing between me and Jessica. I gave her the villa because staying in a hotel isn't convenient for a woman. As for the necklace, that was my fault. I'll get her something else and take it back for you. Don't be upset, it's been so long since I sang you to sleep. Tonight, let me sing for you and the baby, okay?" I neither resisted nor answered. He held me close, leading me back to the bedroom. But just as we entered, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, typed a quick reply, and then hurried toward the door. Before leaving, he still remembered to reassure me. "Something urgent at the company. Go to bed first, I'll be back soon. I nodded, not trying to stop him, and waited until his figure disappeared before returning to the bedroom. As I lay down, my phone lit up. A message from Jessica Evans, a screenshot of her chat with Michael. Michael, I found some old love letters I wrote you years ago. Do you want to come read them one last time? If not, I'll just burn them. His reply was quick. Don't burn them. Wait for me. He had told me he'd be home soon, but in the end, 2 whole days passed without him returning. Not a call, not a word of explanation. Luckily, by then, I no longer cared. Finally, on the very last day of the divorce waiting period, I dialed Attorney Lee. It's been a month. Have the procedures been completed? Yes, his steady, professional voice answered. You can now collect your divorce certificate. Congratulations, Miss Evelyn. From today onward, you'll be free to live a new life. Thank you. After a month of waiting for the first time, a genuine smile touched my lips. The call had barely ended when my phone rang again. On the screen, 3 letters appeared, Lucas. Michael's words suddenly echoed in my mind. From now on, you should stay away from Lucas Carter. I'm a man. I know what men think. His warning still rang in my ears, but my fingers pressed accept without hesitation. Evelyn, it's been exactly a month. Can you leave on time? Lucas's voice was brimming with joy. Yes, I'm going today. Good, I'll be waiting for you. After the call ended, I changed clothes, ready to head out and finalize the divorce paperwork. But just as I reached the door, it swung open. Michael stood there in a black coat. When his eyes landed on my bright smile, he froze, as if it had been far too long since he last saw me happy. Why do you look so cheerful? Where are you going? He paused, then his expression lit up with a sudden thought. Ah, I know. You must be going to the hospital for an ultrasound, right? Let me come with you. I stiffened, unable to answer before he took my hand and led me straight to the car. As he started the engine, I could no longer hold back. I wanted to tell him the truth. But right then, his phone rang. The caller was Jessica Evans. His face changed immediately. He got out to answer, listening briefly before rushing off. He didn't even have time for instructions. Just a hurried reassurance as he looked back at me. Evelyn, something urgent came up. You go on ahead. Don't forget to show me the results later, okay? His voice was as gentle as ever, coaxing me like a child. I didn't say a word. I quietly got out of the car, watching as Michael sped away, and then I called a taxi straight to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Half an hour later, I was holding 2 fresh divorce certificates in my hands. I placed Michael's copy on the coffee table in the living room and sent him a message. I left something for you on the table. Almost instantly, his reply came back, sweet as always. Wait for me to come home. We'll look at the baby's results together. I laughed bitterly at the words. Without explanation, without reply, I pulled out the SIM card, snapped it in half, and tossed it into the trash. My bags had already been packed. I dragged my suitcase out of the Grant family villa. At the gate, I turned once to look back at the place I had lived for 3 years. Michael Grant, from today on, we're free. Goodbye. I turned my back and walked away without hesitation. At the airport, Lucas Carter had been waiting for a long time. As soon as he saw me, he raised his hand high. Evelyn, over here. I smiled and walked quickly toward him. Have you been waiting long? Not at all, he shook his head, taking my luggage to check it in for me. His expression turned serious. Evelyn, are you sure about this? I don't doubt you, I just worry. You've been tied down by family life for so long. Now that you're free, will you feel lost? Don't worry, Lucas. Once I've made a decision, I won't regret it. I pulled the divorce certificate from my bag, its red cover still warm, and spoke each word clearly. Let's go. The 2 of us walked forward side by side. This time, neither of us left the other behind. That evening, when Michael returned home, the villa, usually lit brightly, was dark and silent. Evelyn, Evelyn, he called out, but no answer came. He thought maybe I had gone to sleep. He flicked on the lights. The house felt strangely empty. Muttering to himself, he said, In a few days I'll take her shopping, buy some things to fill the house. Remembering the message I had sent earlier that day, he headed toward the living room. A thought crossed his mind. She's 4 months along but still so thin, her belly not even showing yet. I need to make sure she eats more. But on the table, instead of the ultrasound report he expected, lay a dark red booklet. He frowned, picked it up, and the silver letters on the cover struck him like lightning. Divorce certificate. His pupils constricted, his heart pounding wildly. She's just messing with me. It looks so real, though. His words trailed off as his hands trembled. He rushed upstairs, stopping in front of the bedroom door, clutching the knob so tightly he could hear the thud of his own heartbeat. He didn't dare open it. He was afraid, terrified, that once he did, the truth would be undeniable. How could it be? She married me at 20. At 23, she carried my child. How could she leave just like that? Besides, I never signed any divorce agreement, never went through any procedures. This certificate has to be fake, doesn't it? Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open. The room was neat, spotless, and empty. There was no trace of me. In 3 years of marriage, I had never once spent a night away from home. The certificate slipped from his hand, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. He lunged toward the closet, yanking the doors open. Inside were only his suits, his shirts. Not a single item of mine remained. A chill surged straight into his heart, leaving him trembling all over. Even pulling out his phone to call me was an effort. The line rang, but the only response was the cold voice of the operator. "Sorry, the number you dialed is no longer in service." He staggered, picking up the certificate again. The bright red seal, the embossed stamp, the serial number, all real. His eyes burned red, panic and disbelief twisting together. But the truth was undeniable. The divorce was real. He tore through the villa, but aside from that single document, I had left nothing behind. Even the wedding photo, I had carefully cut my half away. Slumping to the floor, he thought back, dazed. When did she start to change? When did she begin slipping away? Ah, that's right. It started from the time I called him more than 10 times, and he never picked up. From that same day, I had handed him a stack of papers to sign. Later, when it fell to the floor and I snatched it back in a panic, I knew he realized it was the divorce agreement. My words still echoed in his mind. "You didn't even read it carefully. Aren't you afraid I might hand you papers that could ruin you completely?" At the time, what had he really been thinking? Deep down, he knew guilt was eating at him, because that day he had been with Jessica Evans. That was why he told me, "What's mine is yours. When the baby is born, everything will belong to you and our child." But the truth was, Michael Grant had always known I was never the greedy type. At most, I had asked for an expensive gift or two, but I would never do anything to destroy him. He had bet right, but he had also bet wrong. Because what he lost wasn't money, but me. I never expected he would come find me at the lab. Outsiders weren't normally allowed inside, but he used the title of sponsor to step through the door. When he arrived, I was discussing a research issue with Lucas Carter. At the professor's urging, I looked up and was startled to see his haggard face. For a brief moment, my heart trembled, but almost instantly, I scolded myself for being weak. There was nothing left between us anymore. My professor quietly advised me, "He insists on meeting you. The first round of funding has already been transferred, 50 million, contract signed, money in the account. He even promised to keep investing. It's hard to refuse. Why don't you just go and speak with him for a moment?" His words caught in my throat, silencing my refusal. Seeing Michael still waiting outside, I finally pulled off my gloves and stepped out. Facing each other again, I realized how much he had changed. His beard was unkempt, dark circles carved deep beneath his eyes. In just over 2 months, he looked as though he had aged 10 years. I stood in silence, not greeting him, not asking a thing. His eyes fell to my flat stomach, breaking the stillness. "Even our baby? You gave it up? You're really leaving me without giving me a single chance?" His voice was hoarse, laced with anguish, but I was stunned, because in his eyes, there wasn't even the shadow of pretense. "I thought divorce was supposed to be mutual, something that made both of us happy," I said, my tone so calm it was like I was talking about dinner, leaving him in disbelief. "How could it possibly be mutual happiness, Evelyn? I admit I was cold to you before, but I'll change. I'll change everything. Don't leave me, please." His reddened eyes stirred faint ripples inside me. I had once believed he loved me. But in 3 years of marriage, he had never let go of his past with his first love. He married me only because I looked a little like Jessica. That was why he always used work as an excuse, friends as an excuse, to escape me, to fly across the ocean just to be with her. That was why, even when I was in an accident and lost the baby, he had no idea. Even now, he still thought I had abandoned our child. Michael Grant, do you know that 3 months ago, I nearly died in a car accident and the baby was gone? My tone was level. While inside him a storm raged, he lurched forward, reaching to hold me, but I stepped back, avoiding him. His hand froze midair, his eyes drowning in pain. Over and over he could only repeat, "I didn't know, Evelyn. I really didn't know." I cut him off with a bitter laugh. "Of course you didn't. That day I called you more than 10 times, but you never answered. You said you were away on business, too busy to pick up. But I knew that was a lie. Do you want me to remind you?" While I was lying on the operating table, the first post I saw was from her, saying you were watching the sunrise with her. Do you want me to remind you how many times? How many times you chose her over me, refused to believe me? How many times you used excuses to lie to me? Do you remember that night you were drunk? Do you remember what I saw when I came to get you? I saw you kissing her. I met his eyes head on. My voice was cold. Even I know that if you want to start a new relationship, you must first clear your heart. You're 30, not 13. How can you still not understand something so simple? Each word was a sharp blade cutting into him. His face shifted from shock to panic, until only heavy shame remained. He wanted to explain, but he couldn't, because everything I said was true. The truths he couldn't deny and couldn't undo. I was wrong, Evelyn. I really know I was wrong. Please, give me another chance. I swear I'll never leave you alone again. But before he could finish, I cut him off. Michael, wasn't it because you were always hung up on Jessica Evans, regretting that you'd once lost her, that you married me, a woman who looked a little like her? Now that she's back at your side, why do you still cling to me for forgiveness? We're divorced. Doesn't that mean you can be with her openly now? No, Evelyn, it's not like that. He denied it instantly, clutching my hand, rushing to explain. I never wanted to marry her. I never wanted to leave you. But when his eyes met my cold, detached gaze, his voice weakened. At last, he realized just how cruel these excuses sounded to me. He said he didn't love Jessica anymore, yet it was she who could make him abandon me, she who could make him doubt me, she who he sided with time and time again. So what right did he have to say he loved me? The strength drained from his grip on my hand. I gently pulled away, my composure unshaken, and offered him a polite smile, as if to a stranger. Mr. Grant, thank you to the Grant Corporation for sponsoring our research. With that, I turned back into the lab, returning to Lucas's side. Michael stood outside, watching as the two of us spoke easily, leaning close at times to exchange ideas. His chest tangled with 100 conflicting emotions. A thought crept into his mind. Did Evelyn leave me not just because of me, but also because of this man, Lucas Carter? What does he have that I don't? Where do I fall short? His gaze fell on the glass door, catching his own reflection. A weary, haggard man, 10 years older than her. And Lucas? Young, handsome, the same age as her, sharing her passion for research, perfectly matched in both mind and heart. For the first time in his life, the once proud man admired by so many women felt the sting of inferiority. When Evelyn and Lucas walked out together, Michael was no longer in the hallway. "Evelyn, do you want something to eat?" Lucas asked, slipping off his lab coat as they headed outside. "I don't know. Let's just see." I never had strong cravings. In fact, I never truly adjusted to the food in Italy. The experiments kept me busy, and I often skipped proper meals. If I fainted before finishing an experiment, then what? Seeing I was about to settle for something casual again, Lucas frowned thoughtfully. "Since today's experiment wrapped up early, how about we go buy some ingredients? I'll cook for you." "You can cook?" I asked, my eyes lighting up in surprise. Honestly, not before, but after living in Italy for so long, I had to learn to take care of myself. He scratched his head awkwardly, making me laugh. "Then I'll be waiting to taste Chef Lucas's cooking." We walked off, smiling and chatting, until our figures disappeared into the distance. None of us noticed that not far away, Michael stood frozen, his eyes hollow, the overwhelming sense that something precious had slipped from him forever. Forcing a bitter smile, he turned and walked in the opposite direction. 3 days later, while I was deeply immersed in an experiment, my professor suddenly announced, starting today, the lab announced it would now provide 3 free meals a day, offering both Asian and Western dishes. Excited cheers filled the room, but I only lowered my head in silence. This was undoubtedly one of Michael's tricks again. He must have overheard the day I agreed to visit Lucas's home. I shook my head slightly, refusing to think further. Either way, with ready-made meals provided, I had no reason to refuse. Meanwhile, back in the country at Jessica Evans's villa, Michael came to see her for the first time since she had returned. She was overjoyed, running out to greet him with a dazzling smile. Recently, she had reveled in her victory. The man she loved was now divorced, and the woman who had been a stand-in had quietly withdrawn. She remembered how coldly she had once told me to get rid of my baby and leave, pretending it didn't matter, only to find I was weaker than she imagined. Although my departure had left Michael uneasy, Jessica was confident that with patience he would eventually return to her side. And here he was. "Michael, you came. Why?" But her happiness quickly froze. His eyes, cold as ice, pierced her heart. Without answering, he walked straight inside and sat on the sofa. This villa had originally been bought for me. Later, because Jessica said she liked it and hadn't yet found a place to stay, he gave it to her. But now, what had once been affection had curdled into disgust. Why? A single word cut sharply, leaving Jessica momentarily stunned. "What do you mean, why?" she asked, her face full of confusion. "Why did you send those things to Evelyn? Why did you say those words? Why did you harm her?" His voice was frigid. It had taken him 2 months to remember what I had said that day. "It wasn't me. If you don't believe me, check the cameras," and he had gone to check. Though the footage had long since been deleted, he stubbornly paid specialists to recover it. The truth was undeniable. The video had no sound, but the images alone were enough. There was Jessica, sitting opposite Evelyn, arrogant and sneering nonstop. And there was Jessica again, the moment he appeared in the distance, deliberately dumping the steaming soup onto herself. The reality struck him like a thunderous slap. How foolish he had been to fall for such a clumsy act. He had even forced Evelyn to apologize. She had struggled, fallen, split her forehead open, and needed 15 stitches, while he, because of Jessica's single cry of pain, had turned his back and walked away, never once sparing Evelyn a glance. Even on the day she was discharged, he let Jessica sit in the passenger seat and casually handed her the amulet Evelyn had given him with her whole heart. How much must Evelyn have been hurting that day? Now Jessica's face stiffened as she tried to deny it. "What? Harm her?" "Michael, I don't understand what you're saying." She feigned innocence, even reaching out to grab his sleeve like she always did, confident that if she acted coy, he would soften. But this time, her hand met only air. "Jessica Evans, I'm giving you one last chance. You should know, I wouldn't be standing here without proof." His voice was like ice, his eyes distant and untouchable. Her smile faltered, stuck in her throat. Finally, she bit her lip and forced a pitiful pout. "But Michael, you two would have divorced anyway. I just wanted her to give up sooner, to leave on her own. I know I was wrong, don't be mad at me." Her whiny tone, once a weapon that never failed, now had no effect. "Who gave you the right to decide my divorce?" His breath came fast, furious. When she leaned toward him to cling closer, he shoved her hard. Caught off guard, Jessica stumbled backward and fell. A sharp cry rang out, but Michael had already risen, turning to leave. When she realized he had no intention of stopping, Jessica's tears streamed down her face as she choked out, "Are you really not going to divorce her? Then why did you come to me at all?" His steps faltered, but he didn't turn back. "Jessica Evans, I only ever saw you as a friend. You're the one who thought too much." At that, Jessica laughed bitterly, as if hearing the most absurd joke. "A friend? Do you actually believe that yourself? Michael, ask yourself, did you really only see me as a friend? Would a man cross oceans to watch a sunrise with a friend? Would a man neglect his wife again and again for a friend? Would a man give away the keepsake his wife entrusted to him, to a friend? You might fool others, but don't lie to yourself. Even if I had never hurt her, do you think Evelyn wouldn't have divorced you? I only sped up what was bound to happen." Each word struck him like a knife, leaving his face pale and his breath ragged. At last, unable to contain himself, Michael spun back and delivered a heavy slap. The crack resounded, his strike merciless. A red mark bloomed instantly across Jessica's fair cheek, the sting spreading through his own palm. Her eyes burned red, but this time she refused to yield. You said you only saw me as a friend, then who was it that kissed me? Do you think you're still so clean? The veins in his temples bulged. He wanted to argue, but in the end only sighed, his voice low and final. Jessica, this play ends here. Turning away, he walked out, his figure vanishing beyond the door. Jessica collapsed onto the sofa, clutching her face, sobbing uncontrollably. She had never imagined their ending would be this miserable, yet she could not accept it. She had given too much. How could he just walk away? Michael Grant, I won't let go, she whispered through her tears, the words like a curse. In a private lounge at the grandest club in the city, Michael sat sunk into the sofa, draining glass after glass of burning liquor until his mind grew hazy. His friends surrounded him, trying to console him. Why go this far, Michael? So what if you're divorced? Without her, there are still countless women lining up to marry you. That's right. Weren't you close with Jessica Evans before? Then just marry her. Let Evelyn see you can have anyone you want. Exactly, Michael. Snap out of it. Their voices only made him feel more suffocated. They didn't understand. Even if there were 10 women, 100 women, it didn't matter. None of them could ever replace Evelyn. If it wasn't her, he didn't want anyone. Michael could no longer deny the truth. At first, he had accepted the marriage because Evelyn resembled Jessica. But after living together day after day, he had truly fallen in love with her. By the time he realized it, it was already too late. He had been haunted by regrets from his youth. So when Jessica returned, he had wavered. He began lying, telling his wife that company business required him to travel, when in reality he flew abroad to meet Jessica. And when Evelyn was in a car accident, her life on the line, their baby gone, she called him over and over again. Yet in the moment she needed him most, he rejected every call just to watch the sunrise with Jessica. Evelyn, I was wrong. Please forgive me. In his drunken haze, Michael thought he saw her. Is it you, Evelyn? The figure smiled tenderly, reaching out a hand. It's me, Michael. I'm here to take you home. Yes, home. I have to go home with Evelyn. He staggered to his feet, stumbling forward a few steps before tripping and falling face first. Amid the chaos, his friends rushed to lift him and drag him toward the car. One of them chuckled and waved. Jessica, we'll leave Michael to you. Jessica quickly caught him as he stumbled, soothing him softly while nodding. Don't worry, I'll take Michael home safely. But in the car, when she called him Michael, his brows furrowed. His hot breath brushed against her ear as he rasped. Evelyn. Before, you always called me uncle. That's the only way. You can't call me anything else. Jessica's expression darkened, though she forced herself to answer gently. All right, once we're home, I'll call you that, okay? Only then did he seem content, resting his head on her shoulder and drifting into a heavy sleep. 5 months later, headlines across Italy erupted with scandal. The CEO of Grant Corporation weds his first love, but on their wedding day the groom flees, leaving the bride humiliated and alone to face the aftermath. When Lucas Carter heard the news, he instinctively looked at me. I remained calm, my face without emotion. Why are you looking at me like that? I asked. He scratched his head, smiling sheepishly. I just thought you'd be sad. Sad? Why would I be sad? My brows furrowed in confusion. He chuckled awkwardly, but I only gave him a look of exasperation. You thought I'd be sad, and you can still laugh about it? My 3 sharp questions only made his grin grow wider, though he said nothing more. Still, I understood what he meant. Bowing my head, I returned to the pile of data before me. Michael and I were over long ago. Whether he marries, runs away, or makes a spectacle of himself, it has nothing to do with me anymore. If anything, it only proves what I should have seen from the start. He was always irresponsible. The room fell silent. I looked up to find everyone's eyes fixed behind me. Turning, I saw him, Michael Grant, standing there, still wearing the wedding flower on his chest. He had clearly run straight from the ceremony, and he had heard everything I just said. Yet I felt no embarrassment at being caught speaking ill of him. My gaze slid briefly over his ashen face before I withdrew it, returning calmly to my work. Only when he continued to stand motionless did I finally remind him, Mr. Grant, though you are the lab's largest investor, I must ask you not to linger too long. It will disrupt our progress. My tone was professional, my eyes cold, not sparing him another glance. His chest ached sharply. Before I could dismiss him outright, he spoke. Evelyn, can we talk in private? At last, I set down the documents and rose to follow him outside, not out of any desire to hear his explanation, but because my colleagues' curious stares were burning holes in my back. Left unchecked, they'd probably spin a tabloid article on the spot. These were all talented researchers, yes, but with their writing skills, gossiping was second nature. So the moment I stepped out, I closed the lab door firmly, shutting out all prying eyes. Well then, say it. What brings you across oceans this time, Mr. Grant? I looked at him the way one looks at someone familiar but no longer close. But deep inside, I faltered for a moment. Do you really love running abroad so much? In the past, because Jessica Evans lived overseas, he had always used business trips as an excuse to fly to her. And now, with her back in the country, he was following me here, to Italy. I frowned, lost in thought, until his familiar voice broke through. Evelyn. But before he could finish, I cut him off mercilessly. Mr. Grant, we're divorced. I don't think our relationship warrants such familiar terms anymore. Please, just call me Miss Lynn. My tone was polite but distant. Once, he had been the man inside my walls. Now he was an outsider. Michael gave a bitter smile. Clearly, he didn't want to change how he addressed me, but he was afraid of angering me, afraid of losing this rare chance to speak to me at all. Miss Lynn. The two words rolled on his tongue, but he still couldn't bring himself to say them aloud. In the end, he compromised, dropping the address entirely and going straight to the point. I never wanted to marry her. That night, I was drunk, and she deliberately climbed into my bed. The truth is, I haven't loved Jessica Evans in a long time. I was just blinded by stubborn pride, unwilling to face my real feelings. Evelyn, can you forgive me this once? I truly know I was wrong. Please don't leave me. His voice was earnest, as if speaking the words I had once longed to hear. But his sincerity no longer mattered to me. I shook my head. For a brief moment, memories of our wedding surfaced. He had once looked at me with those same gentle eyes. Back then, I didn't know whether that tenderness was truly meant for me. And now, I no longer dared to believe. You said yourself it was regret for a lost youth that tied you to her. So how can you be sure that what you call love for me now isn't just because I chose to leave first and you can't accept it? Mr. Grant, no one stands still forever. We all have to move on. You already have, and so have I. He shook his head wildly, desperate. No, Evelyn, you're wrong. What I feel for you isn't out of pride or regret. I truly love you. When I broke up with Jessica years ago, yes, there was regret, there was pain, but she never marked me this deeply. I admit, when I chose you, a part of it was because of her. But everything we experienced, all the feelings I gave you, they were real. All of them. He thought his words would sway me, but my gaze only grew firmer. Michael Grant, if your love was real but still led you down the wrong path, then it only proves one thing, that your love is far too cheap. And I deserve something better. With those final words, I turned and waved him off, then pushed open the lab door and stepped back inside. The door shut behind me, leaving Michael staring blankly, his eyes bloodshot. He had never imagined it would end like this. His heart felt hollow. Why? Why could she be so resolute, not giving me even a single chance to hold on? They had once been happy, once had a child together. Just one more step and they could have had a perfect family. Now everything was gone. He was wrong. He regretted it. But he knew he would never again see in my eyes the light that had once been only for him. Through the glass, I caught sight of him with his head bowed, his figure hunched, radiating despair. He looked truly heartbroken. That thought had just flickered through my mind when a familiar voice spoke by my ear, accompanied by a shadow drawing close. Hurts to see him like that, doesn't it? I startled, turning to find Lucas Carter watching me with an unreadable expression. I froze for a moment, and before I could deny it, he spoke again. Evelyn, could you stop liking him? Inside, his heart tightened. He was terrified I would reject him instantly. He was too timid, even after I had divorced, even after he had gathered all his courage. He could only urge me not to return to Michael. The confession he had hidden for years still couldn't be spoken. I didn't answer directly. Instead, I asked, why would you say that? Why do you think I'd ever go back? Lucas lowered his gaze so I couldn't read his expression. After a long pause, he said quietly, because you two were married for 3 years. Now he's humbling himself, begging you. Most women would soften. I gave a slight nod, making his heart lurch, but then I shook my head, easing all his fears. No. Michael and I are long in the past. No matter how much he regrets it, the things he did, the wounds he left, can never be erased. People must look forward, don't you think? My tone was steady, my eyes fixed on the data I was sorting, no longer carrying any trace of the grief from the day I chose to leave. Only calm remained. Lucas sat down beside me, his mood suddenly brightening. I still didn't understand why he had been so heavy just moments ago, yet now looked so light-hearted. But I knew the reason I could finally feel at ease pursuing what I wanted was because of him. Though I had once been a prodigy under my professor, leaving the lab for 3 years would have made anyone else hesitate to take me back. Only Lucas, the moment I asked, agreed without a trace of doubt. Even my professor had hesitated, but Lucas had stood firmly on my behalf, guaranteeing me a chance, and I had not let him down. I delivered a perfect result. Thinking of that, I smiled. Thank you. The simple words, with no explanation, made him lift his head in surprise. I didn't elaborate, just patted his shoulder lightly, my tone half teasing, half serious. Don't just sit there dazed. We're already behind schedule. We need to pick up the pace. Lucas cleared his throat and nodded. A moment later, his voice came again, soft and steady. Evelyn, the one you should thank isn't me. It's yourself, the woman who never gave up on herself. Meanwhile, back in the States, the day Michael returned home, he happened to run into my parents. Normally, his business kept him traveling constantly, but this time they found him at home. The moment they saw him, their expressions darkened. We heard Evelyn already divorced you, my father said bluntly. What exactly happened? Michael invited them to sit on the sofa, instructing someone to bring tea, but they ignored it, their eyes sharp and direct. Back then, when they chose him as their son-in-law, there were 2 reasons. First, our families were well matched. Second, they believed I wouldn't be mistreated in his household. Honestly, they had never thought the match was ideal. Michael was 10 years older than me, and the gap felt too large in their eyes. But after much deliberation, they agreed. In wealthy circles, marriages were often either facades covering affairs or cold arrangements where the husband gave everything to his career and left his wife in loneliness. My parents didn't want that for me. And Michael, nearly 30 at the time, had no scandals, no rumors, no flings. When he proposed, he had seemed so sincere that they felt safe entrusting me to him. Never had they imagined that the last time they saw us together we looked happy. They had seen with their own eyes the glow in his face when I was pregnant, the joy lighting his gaze. Yet the latest news had been about a shotgun wedding, where the groom fled mid-ceremony. When my mother first heard it, she thought her eyes had deceived her. How could Michael be marrying Evelyn again, only to run away? Looking closer, she realized the bride wasn't me at all. It was Jessica Evans. And only then did they learn that I had divorced him. At first, they had wanted to call and ask me directly. But my number no longer worked. Most of my friends had been from my school years, but after marrying, I cut off those connections. My parents themselves had once dissuaded me from keeping those friendships. So when I changed my number after the divorce, they had no way to reach me. In their panic, they rushed home and confronted Michael. We heard she divorced you. What happened? They barely sat down before pressing him, not even touching the tea. Michael's eyes reddened. He kept repeating, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but said nothing else. His attitude made their hearts tremble. You mean, something happened to our daughter. He hurried to explain, recounting everything from start to finish. As they listened, their faces grew darker and heavier. Smack! My father's hand landed square across his face, so hard that Michael's head snapped to the side. He stayed silent, no anger, no resentment, just a numb emptiness inside. Where is she? My father demanded, his voice low and rough. Michael gave them my address without hiding anything. Only then did they understand why I had changed my number and moved without telling anyone. That very night, they booked the earliest flight to Italy. 14 hours later, they arrived near midnight, finding a hotel close to the lab to rest. The next morning, when I unexpectedly saw my parents, my heart tightened with a mix of sorrow and relief. I rushed into their arms, clinging to them. But soon after, my mother's face hardened. You left without a word, Evelyn. You ran off to Italy for research, changed your number, and didn't even tell your parents. Your wings have hardened, huh? If we hadn't come looking, how long were you planning to keep this from us? My mother's voice was sharp, and when I looked up, even my father's gaze was stern. I lowered my head, guilt pressing down. I knew I hadn't discussed my decision with them, that I had followed Lucas abroad for research without a word. I believed they loved me, but I had feared they would think the same as before, that a daughter's best path was to marry into a safe harbor, not exhaust herself in a lab. I twisted the hem of my shirt for a long while before whispering, "Mom, Dad, I don't want to marry anymore. I just want to finish the dream I left unfinished years ago." My father sighed, his eyes softening with understanding. "All right. If this is what you want, then do it. A little hardship doesn't matter as long as it's something you love. What belongs to you, no one can take away. Marriage, if it's not with the right person, that's more than just a little hardship." My mother stroked my hair gently. "Yes, if it makes you happy, then do it. Just remember to take care of yourself, okay?" At that moment, Lucas walked over, intending to greet them, but I beamed and quickly introduced, "Mom, Dad, this is Lucas Carter, my senior back in college. Now he's also my colleague in the lab." My eyes lit up as I looked at him, pulling him closer with enthusiasm. Before I could even finish, he stepped forward and extended his hand. "Mr. Lin, Mrs. Lin," he greeted respectfully. After a firm handshake, he excused himself and headed into the lab. I was about to follow when my mother leaned in curiously, her voice hushed with a glimmer of gossip. "How old is he? Does he have a girlfriend?" Their sudden question made me pause in surprise, but since they were my parents, I didn't overthink it. I answered honestly, "He's 26, doesn't have a girlfriend. Why?" My mother's face lit up with satisfaction at the reply. The age gap was right. He was single, and she had just seen the way he looked at me, with gentle fondness and quiet admiration. The more she thought about it, the more pleased she became. "So what do you think of him? How does he treat you?" she pressed. I glanced at her, catching on to her hidden meaning, but since she didn't push further, I hesitated only briefly before replying, "He's very kind. He always looks out for me. I got the chance to return to the lab thanks to him." Without realizing it, I began talking more about Lucas, and my mother's smile grew so wide she could hardly hide it. "Well then, remember to treat him well too," she said at last, her words carrying an unspoken weight. The atmosphere turned quiet after that. Soon after, my parents received notice that they had to urgently fly to another country. They refused my offer to see them off at the airport, telling me to stay focused on my work. I stood and watched as they left, their figures fading from view, that familiar ache of parting tightening in my chest. Ever since I was young, I'd known my parents were always busy, traveling across countries year-round. Each meeting was short, barely enough to savor before another separation. When I returned to the lab, my mood was still unsettled. I had just sat down when a hand placed a candy in front of me. I looked up to see Lucas. I unwrapped it and popped it into my mouth. The sweet strawberry flavor melted across my tongue, softening the ache in my chest. Reunions were always temporary. Partings were too. But my parents loved me deeply, and no matter how busy they were, they always carved out some time to be with me. An hour, a day, a week, it was precious all the same. I glanced at Lucas, my lips curling in a small smile, my eyes shimmering like they held the whole sky. "Thank you for the candy." My voice pulled him from his daze. Flustered, he looked away, muttering stiffly, It's nothing, as long as you like it." Even as he turned, the red tips of his ears caught my eye. I froze for a moment, my own cheeks warming. Just one candy, one thank you, and yet his reaction was so big. The experiments progressed smoothly when the day came to submit our paper. Chatter about it spread quickly online. That night, Professor Chen, beaming with pride, swept his arm wide and booked out an entire restaurant, insisting the whole team go celebrate together. No one could refuse such joy. Everyone wanted to share in it. The banquet hall was filled with food, both delicious and varied. While raising their glasses, Professor Chen looked around for the two contributors he hadn't yet mentioned, then called out excitedly, "Come on, everyone, let's raise a toast to our biggest contributors, Lucas Carter and Evelyn Lin." The entire room erupted in cheers, and every gaze immediately shifted toward us. At that moment, Lucas was carefully picking onions out of my dish. The teasing only grew louder. Even though I tried to take the chopsticks back, I couldn't stop the knowing looks cast from all around the table. "We all saw it," someone laughed. "The two of you always come in and leave the lab together. During experiments, you're always whispering. Come on, tell us, how far has this progressed?" "That's right," another chimed in. "I even caught Evelyn napping at lunch the other day. Lucas snuck his jacket over her like she was some kind of treasure." Lucas flushed crimson under the chorus of teasing laughter. Caught off guard, he didn't know what to do. In the end, he could only wave a hand helplessly. "Eat, eat. Your mouths won't stop otherwise, will they?" But of course, they didn't let up. A colleague sitting beside him raised his brows playfully, pointing straight at him. "Looks like you haven't made any progress at all, huh? At this rate, you're doomed, Carter." "Don't talk nonsense." Lucas slung an arm around his friend's shoulder and clapped a hand firmly over his mouth, gritting his teeth as he explained to me, "Evelyn, don't listen to him. He just likes to make things up." I nodded. Although being surrounded by so many eyes left me uneasy, I could tell it was all good-natured curiosity. In the lab, everyone was always serious. This kind of noisy warmth was rare. A friend, Thomas, had been Lucas's classmate since undergrad, then graduate school, and had followed Professor Chen into the lab. They were still close as brothers. Struggling against Lucas's grip, Thomas let out muffled groans. "Wronged. Let go of me." Lucas's hold didn't budge. Thomas's eyes suddenly lit with mischief, and he lunged forward. Lucas's face darkened instantly, dropping his hand and frantically wiping it with napkins, muttering curses under his breath. The whole room burst into laughter. "Playing dirty because you lost, huh, Thomas?" someone jeered, giving him a thumbs up. Thomas lifted his chin proudly. "Not dirty, just strategy. Justice above all." The cheerful chaos carried the dinner late into the night. When someone suggested going for another round, the group ended up in a private bar. The loud music downstairs was well insulated, so inside, everyone relaxed, taking turns with the microphone, singing and drinking. For me, it was an unfamiliar scene. My parents had always been busy and quiet. After marriage, my husband had been reserved as well. I'd never experienced something like this. Watching my colleagues laugh, sing, even confess under the influence of alcohol or dance together, I felt dizzy, but strangely warmed. As the night went on, the drinking grew heavier, and the toasts kept circling back to Lucas and me. Most of the alcohol, though, Lucas took in my place. By the end of the night, the two drunkest were Professor Chen and Lucas himself. I helped Lucas into the car, his head lolling onto my shoulder. I couldn't help but chuckle softly. "See? You couldn't handle it but insisted anyway. Now look at you, drunk out of your mind." The street lights outside streamed through the window, casting moving shadows over his flushed face. His breath was hot against my neck. For a brief moment, I froze, my chest trembling as if someone had tapped lightly against it. And then I heard him murmur in response to my teasing. In his drunken haze, Lucas pressed closer, his soft hair brushing against my ear, making me squirm and lean away. He mumbled a few incoherent words, then shifted again, finally resting his weight on my shoulder. The scent of alcohol lingered around him, yet strangely, I didn't feel repulsed. "Aiden?" His voice was so faint it was almost like a mosquito's buzz. I thought I had imagined it. But when I tilted my head, straining to hear, the sound was swallowed by the noise of passing traffic. Before I could ask, the driver announced we'd arrived. I watched Lucas stagger, but he still managed to find his bedroom without help. Only then did I breathe a sigh of relief. Who would have thought that moments later, the sound of a thud would send me running inside, only to find him sprawled on the floor, his blanket hanging halfway off the bed. Clearly, he'd fallen. I sighed helplessly, helped him back up, and tried to pull the blanket over him, only to be caught in his long arms and pulled tight against his chest. Let go, I struggled. But the more I resisted, the tighter his hold became. My heart pounded wildly as my body pressed against his solid chest, his breath warm and heavy with alcohol brushing against my ear. And this time, the words he had mumbled unfinished the night before came out clear. "Evelyn, I like you." Heat surged to my face, leaving me so flustered I forgot how to react. I tried to free myself, but eventually exhaustion overcame me and I fell asleep in his arms. That night, we both slept deeply. By morning, the alcohol had worn off. Lucas opened his eyes to find me still asleep in his embrace. Memories of the night before rushed back, his face flushing hot as stone, his limbs frozen awkwardly. I stirred, shifting against something firm beneath my head. Realizing it was too different from a pillow, I opened my eyes wide. His handsome face, tinged red, was just inches away. Blood rushed to my cheeks all at once. You, I stammered before scrambling up, bolting for the door, desperate to escape the embarrassment. But as soon as my hand touched the knob, another hand pressed over mine, keeping the door shut. I froze, the space suddenly suffocating. Behind me stood the man whose feelings I hadn't yet sorted out. His breath was steady, his voice low, husky, and unwavering. Evelyn, last night I was drunk, but I remember everything. I was the one who held you. I was the one who said I liked you. And I need you to know it wasn't because of what happened that I said those words. It's because I already liked you, long before. Being drunk just tore down the wall, and I couldn't stop myself from holding on to you. And now that I'm sober, I need to say it again. I like you. Will you stay by my side? His words tumbled out heavy with both hope and fear. My heart thudded against my ribs like a wild deer. For a long moment, I couldn't answer. Finally, I whispered, "Can you step back a little?" My ears burned, caught in a no-win situation, utterly flustered. To him, though, it sounded like rejection. His grip slackened, and he stepped back weakly. When I turned, what I saw nearly made me laugh. A man who looked just like a dejected puppy, head bowed, eyes dim with hurt. Just moments ago, I had been burning red with embarrassment, but now, faced with that pitiful look, I couldn't hold back a laugh. He immediately looked up, indignant. His eyes seemed to scold me. "I'm already this pathetic. If you don't accept me, fine, but do you have to laugh at me too?" I never said no. "Why are you making that face?" I asked curiously. In an instant, light sparked in his eyes again. Still cautious, he asked, "So, does that mean you're saying yes to my confession?" Thinking back over the past year, I couldn't deny how much he had been there for me. In my sadness, my anger, my joy, and my confusion, he had always been the one beside me. Once I asked him, "It's been 3 years. Do you still believe I can return to the lab? Aren't you afraid I'll fail and drag all your effort down with me?" And he had answered simply, "Because it's you, I believe. Evelyn, even if you fail, we'll start over. It doesn't matter. I'll always be by your side." His eyes shone like stars, full of hope, as if he were gazing at someone meant to be admired. I smiled faintly, then shook my head. Before that glimmer in his eyes could shatter completely, I added, "How could my answer to your confession be so careless? No flowers, no romance, just a man reeking of alcohol who hasn't even washed his face." Lucas let out a low, dissatisfied laugh. "I drank that much because I was taking your share. And besides, you smelled just as much like alcohol as I do, and you haven't washed your face either." I jabbed a finger at him, my cheeks puffing in irritation. "Then I have even less reason to accept such a sloppy confession." My pout must have looked too adorable to him, because he couldn't resist pulling me into his arms again, murmuring softly, coaxing, all right, I promise, next time, I'll prepare a proper confession. Something grand, something perfect." Before I could respond, his chin resting on my shoulder, the sudden ring of my phone cut through the moment. I glanced at the screen, my brows knitting tight. It was Michael's mother. I patted Lucas's back, signaling him to let go, then pointed at the phone, and stepped into the living room to answer. For 3 years as Michael's wife, I had never blended well with the Thorne family atmosphere. My relationship with his parents had always been lukewarm, most words relayed through him. It had already been a year since the divorce. Why was she calling me now? On the other end came muffled sobs, followed by a trembling voice. "Evelyn, I know it was Michael who wronged you before. I apologize on his behalf." I frowned, suspicion flaring, my voice firm. "If you have something to say, just say it directly, ma'am." A shaky sigh then. "Evelyn, will you come see him? He's been diagnosed with late-stage liver cancer. The doctors say he doesn't have long. His last wish is to see you." It felt like thunder cracked inside my head. My hand shook, and the phone slipped, nearly falling. Her faint, tearful call of my name still echoed in my ear before the line cut off. Lucas stepped out of the bedroom just then, catching sight of me frozen in shock. He frowned. What's wrong? I swallowed hard. His mother. She said he has liver cancer. Late stage. Not much time left. I turned toward Lucas, my eyes unfocused, then slowly reached for his hand. In his warm grip, reality crept back. He held me close, pulling me down onto the sofa, his voice low and heavy, tinged with frustration. Are you regretting it? Regretting the divorce? Regretting leaving with me? I shook my head, my voice barely above a whisper. No. Just realizing how unpredictable life can be. After a pause, I added softly, Lucas, let's take a short break. Will you come back to the States with me for a while? He was silent for so long, I thought he had drifted off. But when I shifted to look at him, I caught his gaze, eyes filled with unspoken fear, asking silently, Are you going to leave me? I let out a helpless laugh and reached up, mussing the hair he had just smoothed. He's dying, Lucas. Why would you be jealous of that? I'm only going once, just to end that failed marriage properly. In the end, I returned to the States with Lucas. When I knocked on the door, it was Mrs. Thorne who answered, her expression tangled with emotions. I thought you wouldn't come, she said. I squeezed Lucas's hand, my voice calm. I only came for this once. Afterward, I'll leave. I won't come back again. Even though Michael had betrayed me, and even though he had treated me with cold neglect, we had still been husband and wife for 3 years. Hearing he was gravely ill left a faint bitterness in my chest. Mrs. Thorne's voice trembled, heavy with reproach. Ever since the divorce, he's drowned himself in alcohol every day. If not for that, how could he have ended up with cancer so young? Lucas shifted as if ready to argue, but I stopped him, my eyes fixed on her, my tone stripped of the last remnants of affection. Mrs. Thorne, I only call you ma'am out of respect, I said evenly. But Michael not being able to control himself, not being able to restrain his own desires, what does that have to do with me? I never forced him to betray me. I never forced him to drown himself in alcohol. That blame doesn't belong on me, and I won't wear that crown. With those words, I strode straight into the hospital room. Lucas shot her a cold glare, a soft scoff slipping past his lips, before following right behind me. Michael looked far more haggard than before. Yet when his eyes fell on me, he still forced a weak smile. His gaze instinctively avoided Lucas standing at my side. Lucas didn't spare him a look. He simply pulled out a chair, sat down, and made it clear he wasn't here to interfere. Evelyn, I'm sorry. After a whole year, the first words out of his mouth were still the same. Bookmark. Go back. I neither forgave nor refused him. He was sick now. There was no need for me to be unnecessarily cruel. But then, as if recalling something, he began mumbling. He spoke of not marrying Jessica Evans after all, how she was exposed for wrecking another woman's marriage, her reputation ruined. Desperate, she had tried clinging to another man for support, only to end up despised and discarded, a pitiful mistress mocked by society. As for him, he confessed he had drowned himself in alcohol, destroying his own body night after night. You were right, Evelyn, he whispered, a tear slipping from the corner of his eye. Becoming like this, it's all my own doing. I reached out, gently wiping his tear away, just as he had once done for me countless times in the past 3 years. You need to learn how to move on, Michael. We both do, because holding on to the past forever only brings pain. He shook his head weakly, his breath trembling. I can't move on anymore. Evelyn, you'll never forgive me, will you? I didn't answer. Instead, I rose quietly, laced my fingers through Lucas's hand, and smiled with calm resolve. Right now, I'm happy. I've learned how to look forward. I don't want to cling to what's gone anymore. I'll keep walking toward a future that no longer has you in it.